Okay, so it's on Jacob tonight again. I'm going to sum up with Isaac and Rebekah right before Jacob. Rebekah was barren. Isaac prayed. Rebekah got pregnant. She had a difficult pregnancy. It was like two nations were warring in her womb. Those two nations were Jacob and Esau. And we're going to start off tonight with the prophecy. The Lord is speaking to Rebekah about her pregnancy and why the babies were fighting in her womb in Genesis 25:23. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." From the very beginning, we see Rebekah's two children were against each other. The first child comes out red and hairy, so they named him Esau, which means hairy. And the second came out holding Esau's heel, so they named him heel catcher, which is what Jacob means. In Genesis 27, verse 27, the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And it's never a good thing when parents show favoritism, to their children. We're going to see how that favoritism sets in motion a lot of the difficulties and problems that this family has in the future. And it's going to apply to all of us parents today, something that we can be aware of and think about. Verse 29. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I am about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Jacob did a pretty dirty move to his brother here, taking advantage of him in his situation. But at the same time, it was Esau who despised his birthright. It's a pretty grave sin to commit. When we get to chapter 26, we see Isaac in the same situation as Abraham was. If you remember a few weeks back how I was talking about Abraham fleeing where God wanted him to be, he was fleeing the famine. And he also said his wife was his sister. Isaac gets half of it right. He's in the same position. There's another famine in the land. God tells him not to go down to Egypt, so he stays where he is, which is in the city of Gerar. He listens to God and doesn't go down to Egypt. But where he's at, he starts to fear for his life, and he says that his wife is his sister. And so he gets half of it right. He's afraid that he might be killed because of her beauty. Abimelech finds out, and he says, "What is this that you have done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us." It's like father, like son, right? It's crazy. But Abimelech makes a decree protecting Isaac and his wife. But at least we do see an improvement from the last generation. He only makes half the mistake his father made. And isn't that what we all want for our next generation? Don't make the same mistakes I made. We all have hopes, and we teach our children and the next generation to do better than we have. And we hope that they don't make all of our same mistakes, but we know they're going to make some. But praying for our children and praying with our children is so powerful. It's a powerful combatant to that. And it's something I didn't realize until recently, how much power there is in prayer, especially praying as a family. In chapter 27, Jacob deceives Isaac and steals Esau's blessing. Let's go ahead and read it. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow. Go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." So knowing the prophecy that the older shall serve the younger, and most likely knowing that Esau had sold his birthright to his brother, Isaac is still planning to give the blessing to Esau. That's interesting to me. But then, so he's a guilty party here, right? Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die.' Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies." Rebekah knows God's prophecy as well, but she is worried that Esau is about to ruin God's plan, so she decides to help God out. And we've seen so many times already that when you're trying to help God out, you're not trusting in God. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him. I would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." So he's also a guilty party here. He's not really concerned of it being wrong or not, deceiving his father. He's concerned about getting caught. His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food, just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. So they were using goat skins to imitate Esau's hair. That's a pretty hairy man. All you wives mad about a little hair on our backs, just be glad you're not married to Esau, It almost makes me think, though, that he may have had an actual condition that we know about called hypertrichosis. As a side note, it's a condition where you get hair growing all over your body, and it's in thick amounts, and it's also called werewolf syndrome. And every time I read this, I think about that. I don't know if you guys have seen it in like circuses or what they would call freak shows back in the day. They would display these people that had this werewolf syndrome, and it's a real thing. You can Google it later. It's very interesting. But anyways, back to the text. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." So Isaac is literally speaking against God's prophecy here when he says, "Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you." It's in contention with the prophecy that he knew about. But Jacob still inherits the birthright here. Also take note of it being said, those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. There's a significance here of that being said to Jacob specifically, and we'll get to that when we get down to chapter 32. But Rebekah tried to help God by crafting this whole scheme. And so all the trouble that ensues within their family, again, stems from this. It stems from the favoritism between them all and not trusting in God. He would have still had Jacob fulfill the prophecy. They didn't need to get in the way of that. And by getting in the way of that, there's so many things we're gonna find out right here that end up happening. So we'll get back to the text. After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." His father asked him, "Who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn Esau." Isaac trembled violently, shaking, and he said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard of his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? Isn't he rightly named Heel Catcher?" Right? "This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he is taking my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have made him lord over you and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son?" After this, Ishmael decides he's going to kill Jacob as soon as his father passes away. Rebekah finds out, and looking out for her son Jacob, plans a way to keep him safe. She tells him he's going to have to go far away and stay with his uncle Laban until Ishmael's anger subsides. She tells Isaac she doesn't want their son Jacob to marry a Canaanite wife the way Ishmael has. And Isaac sends Jacob to Laban, saying in chapter 28, between verses 1 and 4, he specifically says, "May God make you a community of peoples." It's one of the ways that they spoke back then. You know, your descendants and all of your offspring is you're being made a nation through that, or you're made a community of peoples through that. Let's not miss the fact that, again, that all the parties were at fault here. You have Isaac attempting to thwart God's plan by blessing Esau. Esau broke the oath he made with Jacob. Rebekah and Jacob tried to obtain God's blessing by deception, but their victory in this only leads to hatred and separation within their family. Rebekah never sees her beloved son again after he flees. So when he gets sent away to go to Laban, and so Ishmael can cool down with his anger, she's never going to see him again. By the time he comes back and all of a sudden and done, his mother's dead. Some of the lessons here that we see are, parental favoritism split their family apart by the growth and the consequences of it. The parents here, right now, including myself, all need to take a personal moment of reflection. You know, do I prefer one child over the other? Is there anything I'm doing that would reveal this to them? You know, that thought might already come across your child's mind just by their insecurities growing up. But let's not be the reason it comes across their mind. Another lesson we have here is the spiritual sensitivity of the characters involved. They all lack spiritual discernment in their actions here, and they suffered the consequences because of it. Jacob's only fear in deceiving his father in chapter 27, verse 12, was that he would be caught and then cursed by Isaac instead of blessed. Later on, Jacob will learn, though, that blessings come from God and they cannot be gained through deceit. So on his way to the land of Haran, Jacob stops for the night and sleeps. God gives him a dream that we all refer to as the dream of Jacob's ladder. God tells him everything he's going to do for him. And Derek already went over this last week, so I just wanted to touch upon it and move on. But we see how God is using Jacob for his own purposes. Was Jacob perfect? No. Was Abraham or Isaac perfect, his grandfather and father? No. God is setting up through these men. We got to focus on what the whole point of all of this is. He's setting up through these men a means of salvation for all the peoples of every nation, tribe, and tongue. He doesn't use perfect people. There are no perfect people. We're not perfect people in this room. But God will still use you. I love this analogy. He uses crooked sticks to draw straight lines. There are no perfect sticks. They're all imperfect. They're all crooked. But he can use them. He'll use imperfect things to achieve his perfect plan. Also here, we see in chapter 28, Jacob proclaiming to the Lord that he will be his God, just like he was the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac. Jacob's declaring that he'll also be his God. Even for all of his deceitfulness, he at least did obey his mother when she asked him to do something. He listened to what his parents had to say concerning whom to marry. In contrast, Ishmael wasn't concerned. He married who he wanted. He took Canaanite wives for himself. And then when he saw it upset his parents, and that they were showing favor to Jacob in this moment by sending him off to marry a non-Canaanite wife, then he was being reactive. He took another wife from the descendants of Ishmael. But you'll notice reading through it, he doesn't care to consult his parents. He just is reacting. He just goes and does what he thinks is right in his own eyes. He sees, oh, they didn't like these Canaanite wives I took. Let me just go take another wife from over here then. He's not seeking what their opinions are, what they want. In chapter 29, Jacob arrives to Haran, sees the shepherds who would roll away a heavy stone off of a well whenever all of the shepherds were gathered together with all their sheep. Rachel is one of the shepherds and arrives in the heat of the day. The men are there, but they're not going to move it away. They're going to wait for everyone else to get there. And Jacob ends up rolling this heavy stone away for her. He waters the sheep, and he tells her who he is in relation to her, and kisses her, and then weeps. He weeps aloud and just starts crying. It's pretty funny for us today, and Pastor talked about it last week a little bit. But it's easy for us to look at that and think, what a weird response to his own action. You kiss a girl, and then you start weeping over it. He did it in the same moment. There was at least a few months from when I first kissed my wife to where I started weeping about it, At least a little longer, more time went by. But on a serious note, we are so far removed from their time and their culture. With these modern phones, we basically have streamlined filth and depravity coming to us at every moment. The other week, I was on YouTube just watching a political debate. I went into the comments to see what most people had to say about it. The first 4 things I saw, because the video just came up, it was within the hour. First 4 accounts are half-naked women asking you to click on the link to go see what they have to offer. The filth is everywhere you look nowadays. When I'm driving into Nashville for work or on my way home, you can see it on the billboards. And so just imagine, if you could, living back then, no social media, no influence of the world like that, like we have today. Not even living in a city as big as Ashland City, which isn't even big, Just living on a farm with your family and your family's servants and raising animals. And there's no TV, no newspaper, none of that influence. Just imagine how pure and innocent you would be. That kiss meant a lot to him, and it meant a lot to her, as we'll see. But Jacob was going to meet his match in Laban, which is Rachel's father. He asked to marry Rachel, and Laban, her father, makes a deal with him. 7 years of work as payment to marry his daughter Rachel. It only feels like a few days for Jacob because of his love for Rachel, but Laban deceives Jacob on the wedding night. They have a feast, and when evening comes, he gives his daughter to Jacob, and Jacob sleeps with her because they're married now. He wakes up in the morning, and he sees that it wasn't Rachel, his daughter, it was his other daughter, Leah. So, I don't know, he was either too drunk from the feast, or it was too dark, because he waited, his father-in-law waited till night, but he used deception. So, Jacob, what's that saying? You get what goes around comes around. There you go. That's what I was trying to say. But in verse 25 of that chapter, we read, "When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, 'What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?' Laban replied, 'It's not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish this daughter's bridal week. Then we will give you the younger one also, in return for another 7 years of work.' And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, 'It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now.'" Do you see how sad that is? We're having multi-generational issues of pain, all because two parents were showing favoritism to their kids. And you see how much pain has grown out of that. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." So she named him Simeon. Again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." So he was named Levi. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Things get really out of hand when we get to chapter 30. Rachel becomes jealous that her sister is having children. She takes matters into her own hands. She has Jacob sleep with her maidservant Bilhah and gets 2 children. And this is one of those things I didn't say, I think 2 weeks ago, but it was part of the culture back then. If a woman was barren, they would have their maidservant be a surrogate, So surrogates existed back then, and just like we have today. But it's still not, whenever you're doing that, you're not trusting in God. So she had him sleep with her maidservant Bilhah, and she gets 2 children out of that. Then Leah, the older sister, sees this, and because she's not having any more children now, she makes Jacob sleep with her maidservant Zilpah, and Leah gets 2 more children out of that. Jacob loved Rachel. She was the original woman he wanted to be with, so he would spend his nights with her. But one day after all of this, she needed some vegetables that Leah had. And actually, she didn't need them, she just wanted some vegetables. So she trades Jacob to sleep with her sister in exchange for some vegetables. So he's getting basically prostituted out by these women. Leah has 2 more sons and 1 daughter because of this. Then finally, Rachel gives birth to a child and names him Joseph, who is going to end up being the 4th great man in the lineage. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Joseph will be that 4th figure that we're going to focus on, and probably Derek will be talking on next week. In chapter 31, Laban's sons start talking bad of Jacob to Laban, saying Jacob had gained his wealth by taking it from his father-in-law. And it causes a whole ordeal and ends up forcing Jacob to flee. And Laban catches up to him and accuses him of leaving in a disgraceful way, not even saying goodbye. He didn't get to say goodbye to his daughters or his grandchildren. And he also accuses him of stealing some pagan idols. But Jacob lets him search everywhere, because Jacob didn't know that Rachel, one of his wives, actually did steal some pagan idols to take with her. And he said, whoever you find in my camp that stole those, because he was so confident, whoever you find, you can kill them, But he ends up not finding them. Rachel lies and says she's on her period and sits on the idols in a bag. So when her father comes in looking for them, she's like, please, just don't be angry at me. I'm on my period, And so he looks everywhere else, doesn't find them. He goes back. And then Jacob just lays into his father-in-law, just basically telling him off. Like, you didn't find anything, let everybody judge between me and you who's right, But in the end, they make up everything. Everything, they just throw it to the side, and they make an oath not to harm each other. When we get to chapter 32, 20 years have passed. 7 years for Leah, and then 7 years working for Rachel. And then it was 6 years working for a lot of the cattle and the animals that he built, a whole flock of them. But Jacob sends out messengers to meet Esau, and they came back saying Esau is coming with 400 men to meet Jacob. Jacob immediately assumes the worst and divides his camp, thinking if he's going to be attacked, maybe not all will be lost. He turns to God in Genesis 32, verse 9, and prays to him. But after this, Jacob ends up alone, and he encounters a man. This is going to be the last part of this sermon tonight, because it's very interesting. In Genesis 32, verse 24, if we can get that on the screen. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked, saying, "Tell me your name, I pray." And he said, Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So he's saying he saw God face to face and lived. He wrestled with God and won. His name gets changed by God to Israel. There's a lot to unpack here. And again, we are seeing God the Son physically interacting within his creation. And we can start with why God renames him to Israel. Israel means wrestles with God, or one who wrestles with God. There's so much symbolically in just the name change. To anyone who knows the history of the nation of Israel, they constantly wrestle against God. One generation will submit to his will and obey him, and then the next generation will turn right around and rebel against him. And it's a constant wrestling, a constant struggle. Jacob is now Israel. His 12 sons that he had are the 12 tribes. Israel is a nation, but Israel is also a person. And the father of the 12 tribes of Israel is Israel, right? So back when Jacob received the blessing from his father of those who bless you will be blessed and those who curse you will be cursed, that we talked about earlier this evening, Israel inherited that blessing. It's a symbolic gesture that we see in the text, put there by the Holy Spirit. This interchangeability of Israel and Jacob plays an important part in a person's eschatology as well. And I'm just going to close with this. But since we're hitting on a key to the prophecy of our future and future that's going to happen in the world, I wanted to just talk about it really briefly, because when the Bible refers to the time of Jacob's trouble, It's an event. It's referring to the Great Tribulation. And it's so easy to be like, what does it mean, the time of Jacob's trouble? But Jacob was renamed Israel. It's a time of Israel's trouble. And we see in the Great Tribulation, when you look at other prophetic texts, the church is going to be raptured. There's a distinction between Israel, who will go through the tribulation because they're spiritually blind right now, because they didn't see the time of their Messiah's coming. So part of the consequence, they're going to go through that tribulation. But the bride of Christ, the body of Christ, the church, is going to be raptured. And you see the difference when you're talking, if we can get Jeremiah 37, because one of the things that other Christians will say is, well, it's already happened, the time of Jacob's trouble. But it says, alas, for that day is great, there is none like it. And it is the time of Jacob's distress, or the time of Jacob's trouble. But he will be saved from it. So you see, some will try to argue that it happened in 70 AD with the temple being destroyed. But Jeremiah 37 says, there is none like it. There's no time in history that will be like the time of Jacob's trouble. And there's plenty of other verses on this topic. I just thought it would be something that would be good to let you guys know, so it's in your mind while we're fresh on Jacob himself. And then as we get to other prophetic verses on the time of Jacob's trouble, you can recall that. But let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you again that we can gather together in your name. I pray that you used me as a tool, Lord, to get your message across. And I pray that you just be with us through the rest of this week while we're away in our lives, and we're able to apply some of this in our daily lives, what you would have us apply, Lord, what you have taught us tonight or gave to us tonight, whatever word. Pray that we can use that, and until we come back together on Sunday or next Wednesday night, Lord. And again, above all, I pray that your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen.